So this project is going to be creating, like this would be an example of what you might do, just this one sheet here. And it's a set, right? It's the idea is that if you remember that axis here, I picked that kind of yellow-green color, which is something you're going to have to mix. And then I'm taking that from steps to this kind of, that supposedly the coolest kind of part on the color wheel I can make, a kind of a blue. And then here to the kind of, let me get that light on there a little better, to this kind of the warmest part. This is kind of an orange here. Now, when you mix these two colors as well as this, there's going to be some subjectivity to how you do that. You're each going to mix it a little differently. That's kind of, you're just trying to hit some kind of ideal place, but everyone's going to do it a little differently, and you don't have to match what I'm doing necessarily. When I look at this, actually, I think that should be a little redder, for instance, but it works in terms of showing the way that this can feel very cool compared to that, right? And then you have this kind of transition in the middle there, and this feels rather warm compared to that. So here's one example you can do where you start from making your choice of the kind of yellow-green, or the other option is more like this one, which would be from kind of your kind of reddish purple. Now remember, again, with your paint that you're using, you're not going to get as sweet a kind of magenta color as that. It's going to be a little duller, certainly. But if you kind of mix it like a purple that's a little more red, you should get kind of somewhere in that area, and it'll hit that kind of temperature neutral place. And then here are the same colors you would mix in this one, right? The blue and the orangish red. And so you're just going to take that step there. So the project is create a temperature neutral color, and that's either this or this, right? And mix a good portion of it so that you might want to do the thing where you mix it in something that you can save, so that you can do both that run and then a little later that run. And of course, these colors are the same exact thing again, as I said. I advise doing this as swatches. I'm not going to kind of insist on it because some of you are getting kind of pretty comfortable with these projects. So I think you could give it a try. Again, the pitfall is that you want to make these feel very evenly gradated. We're still kind of trying to keep that skill going of kind of knowing how to mix from one end to the other, and not very big jumps in any one place. Mix a portion of the warm color there or there, right? This color is very orangey red. And so first you're doing this step from the temperature neutral color to your warm color, or that one. And then mix a portion of the cool color. This cool is a blue without any green or purple. You could pretty much do that out of mixing the two co-primary blues together to kind of get it. So they're kind of splitting the temperature difference a little bit. And then another set of 6 steps in between you get to that. So you're having this 7-step project on all that. I think I do here, do I tell you? Yes, I hear at the top of the thing say, making each color 1 by 2 inches minimum. So really you can make it whatever size you want. I'm saying just make them at least that size, so we can kind of see the study. Okay, is this study kind of clear what we're doing? It's you've been doing this for a while now, and I know a little bit of a groan in terms of these kind of gradations, but this kind of not only the skill to do it with paint, but the skill with your eyes to see it continues to be really important. That's slowly tuning your eyes, especially to kind of see these differences and see how they work in the concert of the whole thing. Okay, so that's that first project. I'm calling it classwork. Now for the next projects we're going to be doing here, get this out of the way. This is these disunity, tension, and discord. So when colors share visual qualities, we perceive them as interdependent or unified. That's like those harmonies we were doing. These qualities include hue, saturation, value, and temperature. The less they have in common, the more colors assert their independence. Disunity, or the assertion of independence, can evoke a sense of visual tension and energy. I hope I was kind of making that clear with all those artists I was showing, the way that's being deployed as a tool. They're not doing it just for the kind of cleverness of it. It's really to kind of serve a purpose. Um, how much unity is desirable? Well, it depends on the function or meaning of a design or work of art. Mario's work that he was showing of that illustrator is really good example of that. Is like, what do you really want to do? How much tension you want to kind of have that thing pop and create attraction and marketability in a sense with those images, but you don't want to have it create so much tension that the thing is just going to kind of repulse you in a way, right? So a bit of tension is really useful. Too much can be good for a certain kind of artists, but not necessarily for something like commercial art, right? It depends on the function or meaning of a design of work of art, like I was just saying. Wallpaper designs tend to be highly unified because their function is usually quietly enliven a room without overpowering the viewer, and you want to be living with it all the time and not having it make you nuts. But in painting and other expressive forms, strident disunity among color relationships might be appropriate to gritty subject matter or used as an ironic foil to soft content. So you could have something that is kind of where the image itself is rather kind of gentle in a way, and you could kind of create an underlying tension with this kind of color disunity and tension that you're injecting into it, creating kind of two things happening at once. Or you could emphasize the kind of disunity of something like, I would say those Peter Sauls are kind of like, he's doing these kind of crazy, weird crucifixions, and he's trying to make them even more disturbing in a way by kind of having these kind of neon contemporary colors. He's kind of, piling on top of that content in a sense. Color harmonies and altered palette and bridge tones are all strategies that assist in creating a sense of unity. That's what we were doing last week, right? Specific time of day, quality of light, or even historical time period can be evoked by a specific unified color choice. The introduction of an anomalous color, one that appears inconsistent with the established color program, can not only look out of place, it can be used to create visual intrigue and tension. Okay, one approach to doing this is to use a unified palette. So taking what we were doing last week and thinking about creating a context, a situation, a place out of a harmony, and then dropping something into that that is gonna crack that open in a way and kind of disagree with it. The backside of this sheet here, anomaly, that's a word we're going to be using a lot in case you don't know that word. It refers to any element that runs against the grain of a consistent whole, such as a circle on a grid of squares, or a color anomaly is a single color, maybe a couple colors, that contradicts through difference the overall character of the color field in which it appears. So color anomalies can be different in either hue, value, saturation, temperature, or a combination thereof. In general, the more factors of contrast, the more differences that are there, the greater the discord. So if the anomaly is only of one factor, let's say saturation, like where you have a world that's set up that's very desaturated and you bring something into it that's saturated, it's starting to separate, right? And project forward maybe, or something like that, or pop. The contrast will be noticeable. If you do it to two factors, the contrast will be more emphatic. Let's say it's not only about saturation, but it's about a different kind of temperature world as well. That can create more tension. If the anomaly is of three factors, such as maybe also value added on top there, the visual disjunction will be extreme and create a sense of real discord. So it's about these kind of factors of difference largely that we're going to kind of be playing with for these things. So what do these look like in terms of our project? Okay, so here's the first one I'm talking about. That's this one right here. Let me cover that for a second. So these are going to be 4 projects, 4 compositions exploring disunity, tension, and discord through color. Any size that's at least 6 by 6 inches, so we have enough kind of to really look at it, and any and varied composition. So keep yourself interested in terms of your composition. They don't need to all be the same. A lot of these are the same. That's just the examples I have, but that's not necessarily what you need to do. Make it interesting for yourself. First one is about temperature. Select a palette of at least 6 colors, all of the same temperature, all warm or all cool. So here, all largely cool, right? That's the context. and then choose 1 or 2 additional colors that are the opposite temperature of the palette and incorporate them into the composition to create a temperature anomaly. So here the temperature anomaly is these kind of rather warm orange and yellows kind of separating, popping from the kind of the context of the whole thing there. All right, that one's pretty, I think, understandable. Again, so how many colors? Well, I'm saying at least 6 plus at least 1 anomaly, but they can be, so that's at least 7, but it can be as many as you want, really. Keep it like, 10 or something at the most. This one is about saturation, value, or hue. Select a palette of at least 6 colors that are unified by hue, value, or saturation. So here, these colors in the kind of the background here, they're not really unified by hue so much, but they are kind of unified by saturation and a little bit by value, I would say, right? They're all very desaturated, and maybe that's the lightest, that's the darkest. They're not too far apart. It's mostly saturation that's doing that. And then these 2 colors here are the anomalies. And incorporate 1 or 2 color anomalies that contrast the palette by a factor of at least 1. So they're really mostly just doing it in terms of saturation. And so they're starting to kind of feel intense in the context of the kind of rather flattened, desaturated world that's in the background there. Okay, so far those two projects you're just really introducing, like, let's say, one difference, one anomaly. Okay, so the next one is Discord. Oops, that is right here. So that is about no, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Extension proportion. This one's a little confusing. When I talk about proportion, I'm saying that this one is really mostly about the amount of a color anomaly. Let's say, what would be the word, like batting above its weight, right? So here the anomaly is this kind of almost the same kind of green. It's really rather small in terms of the overall composition, but it's kind of really, super important in the thing. It's more important than its size would suggest and than its proportion would suggest. So select a unified palette of at least 6 colors to cover a large majority of the composition. So that's all these chromatic grays that are in here, right? So that's covering maybe 85% of the whole composition. That's the large majority of the composition. Incorporate 1 or 2 colors that contrast the palette by a factor of at least 1 use in the remaining small area of the composition. So that's those 2 small things. So this example is chromatic gray palette with a prismatic anomaly. So again, kind of saturation and a little bit value too, right? These are kind of all very close in value, and these are a little bit lighter. So a couple of 1 or 2 differences, let's say, I would say, that are starting to do it. Again, mostly about the proportion of the thing that's being different, being super important and creating a lot of effect. Okay. Okay, so those I'm only really calling for kind of, let's say, maybe 1 or 2 differences. This last one is discord. And remember, here at the top, I say if the anomaly is of 3 factors, the sense of visual disjunction will be extreme and can create a sense of discord. So this one is contrast 2 areas of the composition by using palettes developed according to 2 strategies of unity or harmony. So the first one here is this kind of warm colors and ranging in kind of saturated. Maybe this one's a little bit saturated and kind of desaturated. So a kind of a warm world is the first setup, the context, the harmony in a sense. And then these things here are kind of creating a real sense of like not belonging because of the fact that they're differencing, that they're moving in towards a tint, right? So their saturation is moving in a different direction than they're desaturating, but in a different direction than some of these. And the colors are very high value. That's another thing that's kind of different. And maybe a little bit of kind of some temperature different. Not all of them, but a lot of them have kind of a coolness in them, certainly in context to the rest. So there I just named, like, let's say 2.5 or 3 things that make it different from the context that's being set up. Okay, I hope those are kind of clear. The objective again is to hone a sense of color unity and discord to gain understanding of the factors available for adjustment in the development of a palette. So really, it's building on what we did last week with harmony ideas. You're kind of starting from a place of that and making a unity and then injecting something that is not of that unity and that will be an anomaly and be kind of disrupting and muscling in on that unity that you've created, that harmony. So